I I I think we desperately need to see if the practice confessions arose out of deep disagreements, often bloody and violent, with respect to foundational issues of what is true. And if we share this book with a lot of other people who use it and read it in different ways, it would seem to me that doing some intentional work with respect to, okay, what is this book? How do we read it? What are our presuppositions? What are our filters? What is our tradition? How do we manage disagreements? And it would seem to me that um, doing the work of having these conversations and putting pen to paper or fingers to keyboards in these days to to better articulate perhaps what is inside us already or what we're learning from others. I mean, my argument in a lot of this has been I I was not surprised. I'm not surprised at the shape of the conflict in the Christian Reformed Church, and I'm not even surprised at the size of the two disputing groups. What has most surprised me and disappointed me has been how unprepared those who have wanted to change the policy in the Christian Reformed Church have with respect to, even if their goal is to convince the rest of the church that their position is the best one, and this is in fact what Christ calls us to do. I'm really surprised how poorly they've gone about their mission with respect to the rest of the church. And this is a group that likes to talk a lot about misuse of power. And this group of people has had a tremendous amount of power in the denomination. And, they've tended to be happy to win votes at synod. Now, the conservatives are now going to have exactly the same temptation. And they ought to take, having been on the losing end of how many synodical votes, they should remember what it's like to lose and figure out and have extend the same kind of mercy that they wish had been extended to them, and perhaps was. I don't want to paint this in too broad a picture, but I do think confessions could be a very helpful tool. And I actually think that confessions arise and are it's sort of an analogous way to which canonicity is discovered and embraced. I mean, people often in YouTube debates want to say, who picked the Bible? There's some committee behind closed doors and they're, smoking cigars and let's get Second Peter in there quick a minute.
Yeah,
We
right.
like spirits in prison.
Mhm.
No, and I think Calvin nicely talks about over time, something like the Heidelberg Catechism, for example, it was written for a specific context, but over time, groups in other contexts began to read it and say, wow, this really works. And yeah, there might be things that I don't know if I would have exactly said it that way, but I know what they're pointing to. And I really want to sort of be with this group of people
Yes.
as they continue this path towards glory and hear this inheritance we've received to work this inheritance. And again, as confessionally we say, our confessions are not at the level of Scripture. They're
No.
subject to Scripture. They're even subject to the church. We can vote them up or down.
Yeah.
But these are, if we think about them as tools, not just tools for in terms of our own piety and our own devotions, that's fine. Not just tools in terms of teaching the church and perpetuating ideas within the church, that's fine. But also tools in contexts of conflict where we can say, I'm going to put my cards on the table. Here are my cards. Let's show me your cards. And you can ask me hard questions about, and now that I'm in this much broader internet space, I get lots of hard questions that can be scary. My friend who's a Unitarian is not dumb, and he knows a
No.
lot of church history. And you don't just walk into a debate with him about Christology and the Trinity unprepared because he has done his homework. And
Yes.
the same is true, and the arguments for the church saying, look, how on earth can you're just being cruel to these people who have, suffered at the hands of heterosexual people for a great deal of time, and they haven't asked for a particular attraction or orientation, and now you're denying them the blessings that heterosexuals have had, yada yada yada. So I think, again, confessions are potentially tools that we can use to say, okay, we've got a difference that at least some among us feel is a serious difference. Maybe through confessions and perhaps even through structures, we can have a conversation that, well, we might wind up on the other side of this line, as we do many times throughout church history, other side of the baptism line, other side of lines with respect to all sorts of things. We can at least understand each other and maybe even bless each other in ways that we can in good conscience, because that's what I want to do. And I don't know. And so I would think that confessions potentially could be useful in this process, because we have had a lot of division in Protestant churches. We've had the Protestant Reform split. We've had the women in office split, and we're about likely to have the same-sex marriage split. And I would like us to not repeat. I would like us to not add sin already on top of misery, which is what I am afraid we are about to do. So there's my little speech.